Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. My name's Phil. Joining me as usual, I've got Rohan. How you doing, mate?
Hey, good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And today we've got a special guest, TJ. How you doing, mate?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. As usual, this podcast is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. For a small monthly fee, you'll unlock powerful features like secure, effortless access to your system from anywhere, your choice of voice assistants, offsite backups, and more, all configurable in the UI with no YAML needed. It also supports the development of the Home Assistant project, ESP Home, and other Open Home Foundation projects. Click the link in the description to learn more. TJ, thank you so much for coming on today. Some people may have recognized your voice. You are one third of the HomeTech.fm podcast. Yeah, thanks for coming on. And can you sort of tell us how you got here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is TJ. I'm based in Columbus, Ohio. I've been in I would say, low voltage or AV industry, audio video industry for about a little over a decade now. I got my start actually down in Florida working in professional home automation. So I went into very large houses, you're talking 40 to 90,000 square feet, and retrofitting them with automation technology, lighting control and shades and controlling your TVs and speakers. And before that, I had never heard of that industry. I had worked in computer related stuff all my life. And when I moved down to Florida, I was looking for a job. And oddly enough, I found a job on Craigslist, and it was about home automation. And I was like, what is home automation? I've never heard of this industry before. And, a lot of times it's installing TVs or speakers and that kind of thing. But if you get into the more advanced stuff, it's controlling your lights and shades and all that stuff from, one interface. And before Home Assistant really came out, that wasn't possible with a DIY system. You had to use a professional system like Control4 or Crestron or that kind of thing. So, when I was in Florida, I had actually met Seth. Seth is the original founder of the HomeTech.fm podcast. And I listened to that show for many, many years. And his other co-host, Jason Griffin, had left the podcast, and Seth had done the podcast for about a year. And he put a call out, and he was looking for some co-hosts for the podcast. And one of your previous guests, Gavin Campbell, and I both reached out like literally the same day within an hour of each other. And
Nice.
we joined the podcast with Seth. So I've been doing that for about 3 years now. And I also run my own low voltage company in Columbus, Ohio as well. So I'm kind of involved in the space in a lot of different ways.
That's cool. So it started out as, a random call that you found on Craigslist, and then kind of moved up and around, and now you have your own business. So, in that, do you mostly sounds like you do mostly professional stuff, in the sense that it's all like, again, Control4 or one of those kind of systems, Crestron, whatever.
Yeah, and anymore, I am a home automation dealer for a company called Nice. They used to be called Alon. But honestly, in my professional duties anymore, I don't really do a lot of automation. Most of my business at this point is networking or security, cameras or systems. But I still enjoy the home automation aspect, and we'll talk about it here in a bit. But the entire house that we live in is automated in some capacity. So it's been nice to take what I've learned in the professional space and implement it in my my personal house, and have a better understanding of what products I should use and like what they're capable of.
Yeah, that's cool. So, in environments like this, especially like when you're talking like really big, massive luxury homes and stuff like that, aesthetics are everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take that into your own home, or is this kind of like a plumber's plumbing kind of situation where where it's
The cobbler's children have no shoes. That's
yeah,
the phrase we use around here. Yeah, no, it is really integral to like what I do in my house, because a lot of automation focuses on there's a lot of stuff that can be said about like automating your lights with like motion based sensors and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you need your technology to be accessible to everyone that is a part of the house. And especially somebody that like comes over to the house, you don't want to have to explain how to like make the lights in a room turn on and stuff like that. And so my professional life has helped me in that regard, because I'm able to design stuff that that just works without instruction. And I don't think if I had that professional background, I don't think I would even consider that. But I'm used to going into people's houses and installing technology that like everybody has to use, and the less you have to explain, the better for everybody, right? Because you don't want to get a phone call at like 8 o'clock at night that, you know, somebody's house got broken into and how do I retrieve the camera footage? And I was like, well, you know, the software should be easy enough that you should be able to figure that out yourself, but we're obviously there to help you if you need help with that. So it has definitely shaped my my personal setup a lot.
So if you were going, so I'm guessing you've got your own home that you've set up in that way. Do you have some guiding philosophies in that? Like you would have smart switches, or you don't have smart switches, or you know ensure that you don't have to use a tablet, or there is always an override somewhere. Like, what are your principles that you follow there?
Yeah, for me, it's everything has to work like normal, right? So if you go into like, you know, your grandma's house or something, and you go into the dining room and you flip the light switch on, like the light just comes on. There's not like a weird delay, or there's not like, oh, actually you have to use this switch over here. And so for me, it's making everything work like it normally would, and then adding the smarts in the back end. And you know, for my house, for example, we have smart switches in every room, but we also have smart bulbs in every room. They're Innovelli, you know, Blue Series, which is Zigbee switches, and they're Philips Hue Zigbee bulbs. But they're tied together in a way that you would have no idea that they're smart bulbs, right? Because with Zigbee binding through Home Assistant, we're able to control the light bulbs directly with the switch, and that way there's no lag or hesitation or anything like that. So that's been one of my favorite things, is lighting specifically for my house.
That's awesome. So I mean, we started jumping into, you know, what you're doing at home and all this stuff. But what are you using at home? Are you actually using Home Assistant? You are.
Yeah, so I'm using Home Assistant. Honestly, I gotta say, until about 5 years ago, I was very like anti Home Assistant, but it's mainly because of how much configuration was needed. And like, you know, going back to the cobbler's children have no shoes, the last thing I want to do when I get home after messing with customer systems all day is like mess with my own system. And so, you know, until Home Assistant got off the heavy reliance of YAML configuration, I was not down with Home Assistant. I was using, you know, Smart Things or Habitat and stuff like that. So you know, it's one of those things that it is really nice and it's really powerful. I think they're getting there to where it's a little easier. I've always argued that Home Assistant should have like an easy, medium, and hard mode. Because there's just so much information initially that it is kind of hard to get started. But once you do, it is really powerful and it's nice to have.
I think they're getting that right. Like they've got, you know, when you first open up a Home Assistant instance now, right? They've got a default dashboard, you know, based on the devices that it's discovered. There's also the advanced mode where it does hide like the developer tools and a whole bunch of other, you know, hidden areas in Home Assistant. So I guess that they're slowly getting there, and YAML is slowly being, well, it's not being phased out, but a lot of the configuration by YAML is being removed, right? Like YAML for automations where you want to get a little bit fancy is staying, and it's still there. But you know, setting up a device now doesn't need YAML, right? It's getting much nicer.
Yeah, and like at this point, like, you know, I'm just not a programmer or coder by nature, and so like I can copy and like kind of configure code if I need to, like making like a nice UI or something like that. But it's, you know, it's one of those things that like now I can just do everything from the user interface, and for the most part, I don't touch YAML. Except when I'm doing like more advanced stuff, like, you know, setting up Zigbee to MQTT or, you know, Z-Wave JS UI, stuff like that I don't really need to use, and so like I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where you don't need to make it more complicated than you have to, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and you know, that's the benefit of Home Assistant, right? Is that it is very powerful and you can do a lot of stuff with it. But sometimes but you know, people like me who's like, I want to just make it work, that's a little daunting. But they have come a long way in that regard, and I'm comfortable enough to where I can mess with it all the time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned before that you've got the Innovelli Zigbee switches and some Philips Hue switches. Some Philips Hue lights. Are they? So you're primarily, I'm guessing, Zigbee there. Is that something that you would then recommend installing in someone else's house? Like if you was, you know, doing a home automation job for someone, you would say go a Zigbee light switch and a Zigbee smart bulb, or is there another sort of ecosystem that you would steer someone in a more professional context to?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what your actual use case is. We've actually recommended Innovelli switches for certain clients just because of the customization options. If I was going to go with like, an off-the-shelf lighting solution that just worked, Lutron is always the top of everybody's list because, they are a little pricey, but they just kind of work out of the box. And but the downside is you don't get a lot of configuration options with them. They're kind of, set and forget light switches, which for the most part is what people want. For lighting myself, I like using Zigbee, but it's mainly because the Zigbee binding does not have such a soft limit like Z-Wave Associations does. I think Z-Wave Associations is 5, if I remember correctly. I don't know what Zigbee binding is, but I have not ran into it because certain areas we have 7 light bulbs or something tied into an Innovelli switch. So I like that solution. The only reason for me to go with smart bulbs in my house was because we wanted the adaptive lighting. So we're using the adaptive lighting integration through Home Assistant, and none of our bulbs are actual color changing, but they're white tunable. And so as the day progresses, or as we wake up and stuff like that, the actual light brightness and temperature changes, and I really like that aspect. It kind of makes it feel like a more fancy house. As you're walking through the house, and the lights are automatically adjusting for you, because motion lights are great. You can set up automations to adjust the brightness depending on the time of day and stuff like that, but that adaptive lighting integration just makes that so easy.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're going from like a bluish white, cool white during the day, and then a slowly, like as the sun's setting, getting that warmer yellow
Yeah, like the
light.
2700, 33,000K, that's a nice setting. And, I wish adaptive lighting was a little easier. There's a lot of customization there, but I'm slowly figuring out. There's not a lot of good guides on it. So I'm kind of just winging it at the moment.
Yeah, I thought there was someone had developed, maybe it's on Hacks, like a custom component sort of to manage that. I don't know if you've gone down that rabbit hole.
Well, I have something from Hacks for adaptive lighting, but I don't know. There's just like, I don't know, there's a billion settings, and
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I mean, just quickly pivoting back to home tech here. So, you guys have been doing this for a little bit, between yourself and, you know, the others, Seth and Gavin too. And what do you guys find do you guys focus more on like home stuff? Do you guys focus more on real estate kind of deal? Like how do you do it? Like is it more, or is it just, hey, here's some technology, let's look at it this way? I realized we never actually talked about that part before jumping into your home.
Honestly, the podcast originally started off as more like in the professional space. Jason and Seth, the original co-host, Seth is still on, but Jason is not. It originally started off more as like a professional based automation podcast, and so they would talk about the Control 4s and Crestrons and Lutrons of the world and stuff like that. But as time has gone on, that space is, I wouldn't say it has died. But the innovation has kind of lagged behind what the DIY space can do. And especially, you look at a project like Home Assistant, who has hundreds, if not thousands, of contributors on GitHub. There's just no way a professional AV company can keep up with that. And so these days we mainly talk about DIY automation stuff with the occasional professional things. And so we talk about the news, if a company gets acquired, or if a company shuts down, like we talked about a little bit about the Sengled controversy recently, where the cloud servers went down and people's bulbs stopped working. And so we focus a lot of on DIY home automation news. And then we also throw in our own mix of stuff in there. So we talk about the projects we have going on. Gavin always has a bunch of projects going on and doing crazy complicated stuff with his Home Assistant setup. And so that's always great to hear. And then, Seth and I always have our own projects going on as well. So I would say it's mainly catered to, news and stuff. And then occasionally we have an interview on there. Like we had Segway Navimo on there. We've had Eric from Innovelli. We've had, Agnes from Zoos on there. So it's a good mix of stuff. We try to keep it funny and informative at least too.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah, and Agnes is a great interview too, isn't she?
Yeah,
She is such a wonderful person. She has such a good insight to the industry. It's great to hear from her. And I told her when we interviewed her, I was like, you need to go out and talk to people more often, because you're such a good force in the industry.
Yeah, she's awesome. We've been really lucky too. We've got again, Agnes, as well as like quite a few folks from our vendor series, right, where we start interviewing vendors and stuff, and yeah, and again, for us personally, Agnes has made a lot possible with Zoo sponsoring the show too, so which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and you had Apollo Automation, you had Trevor and
Yeah,
Trevor and Justin on.
Justin. They came up for the Home Assistant Community Day in Columbus, so we actually got to meet them in person and hold some of their products and stuff like that. So
that's cool. Oh yeah, because I guess Kentucky is pretty close to
yeah,
Ohio, right?
he's like 3 hours away. So I forget,
Yeah.
Versailles, Kentucky, or something like that. So not too far from us.
Yeah, that's neat. So it's interesting, like as someone that hosts a podcast and stuff yourself, how do you find that space in terms of like getting people engaged, and how do you find people like not like when I say getting people engaged, I mean like audience and stuff like that. Do you find that that's typically like, hey, we're booming, we're keeping it equal, or do you guys track metrics? Is it just like a, hey, we're just going to put this out there and whoever listens kind of deal?
Yeah, I would say honestly, we're not really in it for like the money or recognition or anything. It's literally just a couple of people meeting up every week to talk, and it kind of is what it is. We're not really, obviously we want people to listen to the podcast and everything like that, but we're not really like actively looking for new listeners and stuff like that. It kind of just grows organically, and maybe that's the wrong method. I really don't know, but like we have some Patreons and stuff like that, so we're at least able to pay for the bills and stuff like that. But it's just not a forefront idea at the moment. And that's mainly because our schedules are kind of complicated, and sometimes we'll go 2 weeks without an episode, and whatever else happens in life. So not really a thing we think about at the moment.
Totally relatable. I mean, it's Phil and I can't retire off of this at anytime anytime soon.
I think like when people like they hear those giant like podcast deals happening and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're so far removed from any of that. Like we don't even like, at least you guys have a sponsor now, or I don't know how long you've been doing that for, but like we don't have any sponsors. Like we just have people come on the show and talk about it.
Even with sponsorships, it's pretty much like, hey, let's keep the show going, right? Is what it is. For the first while, it was Phil and I just footed out of our pocket, right? Dan, when he was on the show as well, it came out of us. But then eventually, it's like, okay, stuff is getting more expensive. We want to do more stuff and better because people are asking for better, and it's like we can't.
You got to have money to do all that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's where sponsorships come in. We are, I mean, even
we are
going to
investing everything that we get back into the podcast, right?
100% of it.
Oh yeah, I mean the software and everything's expensive. It's not like the stuff that you're using is cheap in the grand scheme of things. So you have to pay for it somehow.
Yeah, exactly, right. And now we have an editor and who's fantastic, but again, it's a cost, right? So it's it's that kind of stuff. It's the matter of do we stop this to spend time with our families because before it was Phil doing all the editing, right? I promise you don't want me doing any editing.
Me either. So literally Seth does everything with the podcast. Gavin and I just show up. And that's probably why some of this stuff falls by the wayside. So
exactly, right. And it's like there's cost to stuff, right? Which is it is what it is, right? It's either that or we can't really keep it going with our between family lives and
what makes it also successful for you, you would be able to relate to this too, TJ, like when it's fun, right? Like it's just like the three of you, and you can tell that it comes through in your podcast, right? Like the three of you getting on a call and just talking home automation, right? In your smart homes. And that's what we try and do here, right? Like we just try and encourage the community to come on and like just tell us about your smart home, right? Like how you're using Home Assistant, what's in the latest release. Just sharing is caring, right? And I think that comes through on home tech as well.
And I think it hurts us sometimes too, because like we'll have companies that will send us products and stuff, and like I'm going to give my honest review of the products every single time. It doesn't matter if I pay for them or if I don't pay for them. Like if somebody and we've had this before, Nanoleaf has sent us stuff, or Segway, Navimoa sent us stuff, and it's just like, you could send me this stuff, but I'm going to give my honest opinion on it. And some of those companies keep sending me products, so it's obviously not the end of the world. We try not to be overly negative. There's goods and bads about literally everything, but it's we have a tech audience that wants to know about the more nerdy things. Like, they want to know about the integrations, or they want to know how the installation was and stuff like that.
They don't want the marketing pitch. They want the real use case, right?
Yeah. You could look at pictures and see stuff and read, fake reviews and everything, but you want to know like actual use cases and everything like that. And that's kind of what we try to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our podcast isn't really catered specifically for reviews or anything like that, right? I mean, we have our vendor episodes and stuff, and it's just a bunch of people we think who are cool that are like, they come on, like, again, Zeus, Apollo, all those kind of folks, right? Or even smaller folks that are doing interesting things, right? And I don't know, just get your message out here. I mean, clearly the community uses your product, so get it out there, right? And it's but and I mean, we use a lot of the stuff. It's what we use at home too. Again, like Phil and I were talking about this again. Like, we were talking about on an episode we just recorded yesterday. We were just talking about or day before yesterday. I don't remember. It all blends in now. It's around fire alarms, right? And it's just like, hey, like, what can I use here, right? And Zeus has like a little DC sensor
Yeah, a little
that can
signal reader.
Exactly, right. So like a lot of those kind of things, and it's like, okay, these are genuinely things I would use, right? And yeah, okay, cool. Now Zeus sponsors a podcast, but I would have gone that way anyways, probably. And it's again, I had a Zeus USB Z-Wave radio forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just what stuff I would do, right?
Yeah, that's the thing with me, is like, I only try to request things I'm actually going to use,
Yeah,
so I'm not out there like requesting a billion things from different companies because I just want to play with them. It's like, I
yeah,
want to actually install this in my house. I'm probably going to buy it anyway. Would you send it to me, and then I'll talk about it on the show? Either way, I'm going to talk about it on the show. But
yeah.
it makes it nice when you don't have to pay for it. So
It'd be great if I could. Yeah, exactly, right. And
I was going to say, it's also then you've got someone to talk to, right? Like, and give some, real world feedback to, as opposed to, okay, I've just bought this product. Now, you are actually in a position to give some feedback to the company.
yeah, and we're using it in like a different way. Like, I have a couple, Kara sends us some stuff once in a while, and we're integrating that with Home Assistant, and it's like, well, we sent this to you, but it's not really meant to integrate in Home Assistant. But I'm like, well, that's how I'm going to talk about it, because that's how I use my system. And like, a Kara is actually a good example. I use a Kara at my office. Because I have the little relay to control my garage door, and I have a little camera and like a little door sensor. And it's like, okay, so I'm using it like the legitimate purpose over here, but I'm also integrating with Home Assistant over here. And so I can talk about both methods a little bit.
yeah, and I mean, it's not like people are buying a product because it will only work one certain way, the way they intended it to, right? There's always going to be people that are going to take it and be like, I wonder if I can do this and this and this with it, right? And then it sounds like that's almost a question you're answering. Just to some extent, obviously, people are going to do their own thing too, but
yeah, I would say in some way, we're trying to cater more towards, I would say, the nerds,
yeah, for sure, And it's funny, CES is funny too, right? Because it's like there's two veins of people. One who, like, you try and be like, hey, I'd love to see what you got, whatever. It's those kind of things. And the other one is like, hey, we want to talk to you, but we don't really need anything from it. Like you said, it's not something I would use at home, but I do think that tech is interesting, whatever. So cool, let's talk about it, right? And as I always find that, especially the ones where you're like, nah, I don't really like, that's cool. I mean, if you want to send me something, sure. I'm not really going to use it, and they're like, no, I'm sending you one, right? And you get it, and it's like, okay, cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but sure, right? And
got to find a use
you
for
end
it
up,
somewhere, at least, or give it to a family friend or something. Because I've done that with a couple of things. It's like, I'm not going to be able to use this, but here's a friend that needs it, actually. So
exactly, you give it away or you do something, right? And it's like, I'm not a big fan of e-waste either, right? I'm not just going to take it and chuck it and whatever. But that is as long as somebody doesn't come over and be like, oh, what's this, and rip it apart, right? And they're like, okay, now I can't give this away.
Yeah, e-waste is bad. Like I'm sure TJ, you've got the cupboard of shame, right? Like the gadgets that will never be put into production in the house, right? Like,
Oh no. So I'm a good purger. So
oh
it
really?
was better when I didn't own a house because we moved every couple years for an apartment or
Yeah.
whatever. But I am in the opinion that so actually this is a good example. A car has sent me a lot of devices over the years. They have, I think it's called like the G5 PoE
Yep.
camera.
Yeah, I got the same one.
They sent me
I got
one.
one
I
right here.
loved it. Yeah, I love it. It's a great camera. But
Yeah.
like when they initially released it, it did not have like you had to pay to like access footage kind of thing. And they had a couple updates that they've released since then that kind of helped alleviate that. But like I couldn't use it in my house, and I really liked it anyway, but I just couldn't use it. And so I gave it to my neighbor across the street. I was like, "Here, you can just have this. Let me know how you like it. Like set it up and everything, and that way I can talk about it on the show at least." Because I used it a little bit, but I like it's nice to get some like average or quote unquote normal people's opinion on what the device does. And so I'm a firm believer, like if I'm not going to use something, I get rid of it, because if not, it goes into a box and then it like dies somewhere in the back of my warehouse or my office. So I try to get rid of stuff before like it's useless.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's
I have
a
20 I
great
have
call.
20 bins of cables though, so don't ask me about cables.
Okay.
But
all
like
right.
actual devices, I try to get rid of, because at some point they become useless, right? Like unless they're like
Yep.
Zigbee or Z-Wave stuff, like there's a finite life on a lot of this stuff, and so I try to repurpose it or find a new home.
Speaking of home, so yeah, we've touched a little bit on your home. What, like you said, you've basically got everything automated. Can you give me like an overview on what that looks like?
Yeah, so we live in a relatively small house, so it's pretty easy to automate, but it's about 1,100 square feet. And so all of our lights are, as I talked about, all of our lights are Innovelli Zigbee light switches with Philips Hue bulbs. We have motion sensors in every room, along with millimeter wave sensors. But we have even some of the more fringe stuff automated, like our electrical panel has an Emporia view installed inside of it, so we can get electricity readings. Our water was integrated until last year, and they changed our water meter out, so that is not anymore. I'm also reading my gas meter, so I can tell how much gas our house is using. But also we have some water valves to control like our smart garden, as I call it, so we can automatically water the plants every day, at certain times. So pretty much everything at this point is automated. We have automated our Z-Wave smoke detectors. Yeah, so many things.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just went wild when we bought the house a couple years ago. I was like, I've been doing this professionally for so long that
Now it's your turn.
I already have my build list of like what I would install in my house, and I just went ham and I started buying everything and installing it. And
cool.
I haven't regretted most of those decisions. So
what are your thoughts on doorbells and smart locks? Have you got one? Have you gone down that rabbit hole yet?
yeah, have you read on like the internet where people are afraid to use smart locks?
Oh, don't get me started. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Like,
So yeah,
people
so
are gonna hack, like China government's gonna hack into your smart lock or something, right?
Literally every exterior door for our house has a smart lock of some capacity, and we have a PoE Ubiquiti doorbell. I personally, I love the smart locks. It's one of those things that like, is it more secure than a normal lock? No, it's not. But like, when we come home, every day, the door automatically unlocks for us, kind of thing, because it's based off geolocation. And so that way, like, the only time I'm really touching my door lock is to lock it when I leave, even though it could automatically do that as well. So I'm a big fan of smart locks. And I think for me, smart locks and thermostats are like the easiest way to get into home automation, because it replaces the functionality of something that's already there. You're not installing like a whole new concept or anything like that, but you add the smarts in the aftermath, right? So a smart thermostat is a good example. Like nobody needs a smart thermostat, but it replaces your existing thermostat, and it makes it to where like when you come home from vacation, you can just turn the AC back on before you even show up, and the house is already cool. Or set schedules. I don't set schedules for my thermostat. I'm kind of just set it and forget it kind of thing. But like those two devices for me, smart locks and thermostats, are the best thing to do for a new person.
Yeah, and it's also almost, especially with smart locks, it's almost that intrinsic like immediate value that you can see, hey, I walked up to my door and it opened or whatever, right? And or I said goodnight and I forgot to lock the door and my door locked, or whatever that looks like, right? And it's almost that instant, rather than, even I find even with like lights and stuff, immediately when you first when you first get into home automation, you're still like, oh, let me use my phone and turn on my lights and see how cool that is, right? And it's like, okay, that's there, but this is also one of those like proper automation kind of deals, right? So, which
Yeah, and for me, like unless I'm controlling like other rooms or something like that, I don't want to use my phone to control my automation system
right,
for the most part. Like the phone exists, the app exists, and like if I'm in bed and I need to like turn off the kitchen light or something, I can do that. But like the app is really just like an override if something else happens. So
I find like with smart locks, I haven't had to carry like house keys anymore. Like the only key I carry is the fob to my car. And that to me was like a win in itself, right? Like just get rid of the keychain, just carry the car fob. That's it. Got pin codes, temporary pin codes. Like, have you got a certain lock that you went down the rabbit hole with? Like, if you wanted to go a Zigbee lock or a Wi-Fi lock for this reason, or
yeah,
what was
so
your lock
on my
choice?
house, I have a hodgepodge of stuff. Unfortunately, my house, the front door lock is a Yale Z-Wave lock. I
Yep.
actually bought that brand new when I moved into the house. I really enjoy that. The setup on that one was a little more annoying because I think I had to like add it to the app and update it and do a couple other things before I could actually include it in my Z-Wave setup.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that was kind of backwards, so I'm not really a fan of that. But I also have like a switchbot lock on my back door because like the retrofit lock,
Yep.
because
yeah,
my deadbolt is actually not a standard size, and so I couldn't install just like a normal smart deadbolt. And then I have an Aqara deadbolt on my kitchen door, and the Aqara one just uses Zigbee straight into Home Assistant.
Yeah, nice. I have the two Yale Z-Wave locks as well, just deadbolts. But the version that I have, you just need a little, you just buy a separate module, a radio module, plug in the back. So I didn't even never connected it to Wi-Fi at all.
Yeah, and that's why I like the Yale one specifically, is because they do have that module, and they have a module for Zigbee. I think they have a Matter one now as
Yeah,
well.
they do. Yeah,
So they have Zigbee, Matter, and Z-Wave, and they also have a Wi-Fi one. So you can literally have
yeah,
any wireless technology you want. And the other smart locks, you have to buy that in mind, right? So if you go buy a quick-set lock, you have to buy a Wi-Fi or you have to buy a Z-Wave one. And
yeah,
and so the Yale one just makes that a little easier because then you can change in the future.
yeah. Which is a great way to design it, right? And
Yeah.
hey,
I
it's
honestly,
actually
I
more
wish
money.
I wish more products were like that, like light switches and stuff, right? Because,
Yeah,
it's one of those things that, like, right now I'm using the Zigbee for all my light switches, but if I wanted to switch the Z-Wave for some reason, I have to buy all new light switches. That doesn't make any
yes, yeah,
sense. I wish I could just buy a chip for it.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, right. And again, going back to our earlier point about e-waste, right? It's why is it okay for whatever reason I decide tomorrow I'm going to chuck Zigbee, right? I don't
Hmm.
want it in my network anymore, or whatever reason that is. Do I really want to go and spend another like whatever $400, whatever? Again, it's not. These things aren't cheap, right? It's
yeah,
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of a doomsdayer about Matter at this point. I don't. It's not really something I really care about. But one of the things I actually do think is going to be nice that comes out of it is that the chips for it are relatively cheap, and they're making
yeah,
multi chips that actually have, like, they have Zigbee and Thread in there, but
mm,
they also have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and so I'm excited about that because that opens up the possibility for vendors to be able to allow you to switch it without physically switching a chip. You just go into programming and say, I want to do Zigbee this time, and it does. So I'm hoping that kind of comes out of this whole thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you've got guys like Shelly basically that are doing a lot of that stuff too, right? Where they're like, hey, pick your poison and any one of it, right? Like we don't really care.
Hmm.
Do you want to do Bluetooth? Okay. You want to do Zigbee? Cool. Z-Wave? Cool. Whatever, right? And a lot of their stuff is getting Matter certified too, which is, you know, uh, I agree. That's how it should be, right? So it's like you just buy this one thing, and I don't really care how I use it, or they don't care how I use it. Just use it, right? Which, from a business perspective, I think is smart too.
If I could pay like $10 more for a device that could like switch between all those, I totally would. Like if Innovelli, for
Yeah,
example,
future
came out with a
proofing.
light switch and they're like, I don't know what their normal price is now, but they're up there. They're like $60 each or something. But if
Mhm.
they came out and they're like, hey, for $75, we can give you this light switch that has, all 5 of these radios in it. And heck yeah, I'm going to buy that every single time because I just, it gives me more flexibility for the future.
yeah. Absolutely, because you don't know what in the future you're
Yeah.
gonna have, right?
Right.
Like, am I gonna just? Yeah, I would. I totally agree.
Like we always have a joke that like Z-Wave is going to die on the show. I think it's mainly just me, because at this point everybody's talking about Zigbee and Matter and Thread, and Z-Wave's kind of over here doing their own thing. Like they've released long range and stuff like that. But I was joking around that Z-Wave isn't going to be around in the long term because it's mainly for nerds like us that kind of enjoy the advanced configuration and stuff, and the average consumer does not care about that. So like, but maybe if you put it into an all-in-one chip, somebody might care about it.
Well, I think they're slowly realizing that too, because they're slowly becoming like more open source. There's now another chip vendor. It used to be, just one.
Oh, just one, yeah. And they were so expensive. I mean, you could never find a Z-Wave device for under like $50 US. Like they were always so expensive. And it was for like a motion sensor, something silly.
Yeah, something silly like that, or a water leak sensor, or even a door sensor, right? A door sensor that I can get from IKEA on Zigbee is like $15. The nearest Z-Wave thing is like $30-40 Australian.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and I like Z-Wave better because you do get a little more, I don't know, it's a little more robust. There's not as much interference and stuff like that, but it is much harder to find Z-Wave devices. And, I would say even like, 10 years ago when I first got into the automation industry, you did not use Z-Wave because it was just like, it was so awful. Like you would have like a small like doorway that'd be like 15 foot away from the hub, and you'd have to install a repeater in between the hub and the door because like it just wouldn't reach for some reason.
Yeah, all brands wouldn't, interoperate between each other, right? Like you could have an AOTech thing over here, but it wouldn't relay for the Fabaro thing over here for whatever reason.
Yeah, which is not what Z-Wave is about, right? There's Zigbee, which can be locked down to the ecosystem and kind of reskin, but Z-Wave is just supposed to work. There's not, I think there's different frequencies if you're in a different part of the world, but like it's just supposed to work. You're supposed to be able to just take a Z-Wave device and use it with any Z-Wave hub, and that has not always been the case.
What are your thoughts? Like, I feel like Z-Wave's almost got like a new renewed kind of sense, right? So at CES, Phil and I were invited to a Z-Wave breakfast thing, right? And they're talking about a lot of their stuff. And again, like Phil mentioned, there's now another chip vendor, Trident. I keep messing up their name. I think it's Trident, right? And a bunch of, I think there were ex Silicon Labs folks that were decided they want to do things a different way, whatever that looks like, right? So, and with LR coming in, the proper Zigbee alliance, or sorry, Z-Wave alliance coming in and stuff like that, I almost feel like it's got a little bit of like a renewed, like fresh outlook, right? And yeah, I don't know. Until then, I would have probably been like, well, I think Z-Wave's dead. But now I'm actually like, okay, you know what? I genuinely am like, I wouldn't say I was pro Zigbee before because I don't think I was pro anything, but I think I'm kind of leaning more Z-Wave these days, right? And it's I don't know, I just think that there's a little more renewed piece there, right? And it's not, and I think Matter is, I'm not against Matter. I think Matter is very fragmented in its thinking, right? And I get Matter's a higher level protocol, whatever, right? So it's like, yeah, you want to use wireless, you want to use like Thread, you want to use whatever, it's fine. So I like the flexibility there with Matter, but I don't know. I think compared to Matter, I think Z-Wave is actually easier or less complicated these days, right? Coming from what you said, which I completely agree with. Originally, it was like the nerds, like, hey, here's all these random configs that you can change and knobs and buttons, but
yeah, I would agree with that. I think Z-Wave is making the right strides here. Just like we were talking about the one chip manufacturer for the longest time just drove up prices. And there was there's a problem with availability. I think during COVID, like Innovelli couldn't get Z-Wave chips, for example, and that's because literally one company makes all the Z-Wave chips. And if you have one company that makes everything, they're going to prioritize the bigger manufacturers. And so I think they're moving towards the right path. I don't know where it fits into a Matter world, right? Because Matter is supposed to be this thing that kind of solves all these tech problems that Z-Wave kind of has, because not everything has a Z-Wave hub, for example, and there's only one way to add Z-Wave, and you have to have a Z-Wave hub, whereas Matter kind of works over Thread or Wi-Fi or LAN. There's a bunch of different options there. So I used to be more of a doomsdayer about Z-Wave, but I kind of think it's going to stay around, especially with the long range stuff now. the issue with Z-Wave for me always was the length that you could get, an install to. As part of one of the services my company offers is we do, security systems, and the security systems we do, they all have a Z-Wave hub built into them. And so we can do some basic, lighting control and outlet control and stuff like that, but we never used it because it just, like, for the most part, it was unreliable. Or if you went into a long house or, a big house, you'd have to install a bunch of repeaters, and, that caused some delay and stuff like that. So I think they are moving in the right path, and I'm interested to see them open that up more, because I do think Z-Wave is the superior, frequency for this kind of stuff.
I don't know where it is that I heard this, but I heard the term matter over Z-Wave get thrown around a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was at CES, Phil. I think it was at that breakfast thing. I don't know who said it or where or why or what the context was. I don't remember that part. And so I don't want to misquote somebody or anything like that, but there was definitely chatter about matter over Z-Wave. Not that I'm saying this is going to become a thing or anything like that. Please do not assume that.
Right. I think I've heard something similar, though. Yeah, I've heard something similar, and honestly, isn't it the same company that owns it all anyway? So, like, if anybody can figure out, it's Silicon Labs. Silicon Labs owns Z-Wave, and they own Zigbee. And they're part of the Matter Thread Alliance. So, if anybody could figure it out, it's got to be Silicon Labs.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, again, to our earlier point, it's nice that it's not all on Silicon Labs now. I think that was one of my original problems with it, is it's too much vendor lock-in.
Yeah.
I think, and if what happens if tomorrow Silicon Labs goes away,
right?
Does that mean I'm now sitting with the antiquated stuff, right? So now there's with Trident coming in. I think that to me that was a big game changer for Z-Web as a technology.
Yeah, it's like people actually care about it, right? Because it's when nothing changes and they don't release the long range and stuff like that. It's like, all right, well, nobody cares about this, so why should I care about this?
Yeah, like, where's the innovation?
Right.
If you're looking to upgrade your smart home, you can't go past Zeus. Add Z-Wave long range to your home assistant setup with the Zeus ZST39 USB radio. Their advanced technology operates in dual network mode, combining a reliable mesh system with ultra-fast direct device-to-hub connectivity. With Add Z-Wave long-range support, you can get coverage up to 1,300 feet or 400 meters, both indoors and outdoors. And it's extremely secure with unique DSK QR code scanning, which you can now directly do within Home Assistant. The Z-Wave JS integration in Home Assistant enables its seamless compatibility with a range of brands, all working together through the secure, private, and standardized off-cloud protocol. But that's just the start. Zeus offer a range of affordable and innovative devices, including water leak sensors, water valve controllers, smart plugs, scene controllers, and even color paddles. Color paddles for their scene controllers, dimmers, and switches allow the smart devices to blend seamlessly into your home. For the best prices on all Zeus products, head over to thesmartesthouse.com. That's thesmartesthouse.com.
Speaking of, obviously we were talking about Z-Wave and Zeus and all of this stuff. What is a lot of what you're driving at home? So I know you talked about, like, hey, we're doing a lot of our lights, our doors, all of this kind of stuff. At home for yourself, TJ, what? Well, first of all, how are you driving a lot of these automations? Is it 100% everything is automated, and then you use voice or tablets or phones or what have you to augment, or is it primarily driven by those latter types of things?
Yeah, so most of our house is based off of automations, and obviously this is in no way perfect for every single day, but we use automations for everything. I do not use any voice at this point. Like, we have a couple Google Home speakers around that, like, we talk to like set timers and stuff like that, but I'm really not using those to control the smart home at this point. I'm not a fan of the voice control myself. Everything is automations, and then we have an app on our phone, for manual override stuff. But I try to automate all the boring stuff, like all the lights are automated. We have like a bed sensor that, when we get into bed, like it automatically turns the lights off and stuff like that. So I try to be hands off, but still have those physical controls if we need to. A good example is, motion lights. All of our lights are motion activated between, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. But like, if you're not feeling well or you want to take a nap or something like that, there's a toggle on, every page of Home Assistant where you can turn the motion lights off in those rooms. And so, if you're not feeling well, you don't want the lights to blast you every time you walk into the hallway or something, you turn the motion off and that's disabled. And then the next day it automatically turns back on. So we try to do as hands off as possible.
How are you managing that? If you've got like an input boolean to say, all right, motion lights, yes or no, or are you physically turning the automations off and on?
Yeah, I'm a little rudimentary in that regard. I don't know if I've figured out a better way, but we're literally just disabling the motions. The Innovelli switches, they actually have the little config button, I think they call it, on the switch. It's just a little tiny little button that you can program for things. In every room, if you double tap that, it turns the motion automation off for the room you're in. And so you can just manually do it, or you can do it through the app. So.
And you mentioned when we were at the beginning of the episode that you're using both motion sensors and wave sensors, like the IR sensors. Are they two separate devices in each room, or have you got like a single device that's got an IR sensor and then an wave sensor on top of that?
Yeah, they're separate sensors. So for a while just until recently, there wasn't really any good millimeter wave sensors out.
Yeah.
I have a couple of the Kara FP2s that I've bought, but they're like $80 each. And there's not really like, there is a way to get them into Home Assistant, but I wouldn't classify it as like a direct integration by any means. And so in some of our bigger rooms, we have 2 or 3 motion sensors because for me, I want the lights to turn on like as soon as I walk into the room, but I don't want any false positives, right? And so we have them strategically placed to where like no matter where you enter the room, the light will turn on automatically. And then the millimeter waves are nice because then it doesn't time out. If we're sitting still or something like that. So like my office is a good example. We're going to sit here for an hour talking about everything we're talking about. And my motion sensors are not going to pick me up. Whereas the Apollo millimeter wave switch I have right here is going to know that I'm here and can tell exactly when I leave. So we're using a combination of things. And then in Home Assistant, we actually have the motions, grouped together. And so no matter what, I'm just using that group every single time, which makes it easier for like managing my automations and stuff. So I only have to change the automation, but I don't really have to mess with the groups or anything like that.
Yeah, and then in the future, if you add like a motion sensor to that room, you just add it to the group, and then the automations don't need to be updated, right? Because
and that was a Gavin like suggestion because I didn't even think about that at first, and he was like, no, you got to use helpers and and tie these all together, and I was like, oh, that's so genius.
Yeah, there's so many like little tricks like that, right? That you can fall into. Any music automations in the house, or are you using any like Sonos speakers or anything around the house?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up because this is actually my favorite automation. We have Sonos speakers in every room, and like we literally only use them to listen to the TV in every room. So we're watching TV, and we're in the living room, but the kitchen's right next to us, and we want to listen to the TV while we're doing dishes or cooking or something like that. So in the kitchen, the office, and the den, or our 3 seasons room, we have TVs as well. And as we walk around, if the living room TV is on and we walk around to a different room, it automatically groups the Sonos speaker to that to the TV audio. And then if we have a TV in that room as well, it automatically turns on to the same thing as well. So if you're walking around, the TV automatically turns on to the same input, and then the audio adjusts automatically. And then once you leave and you're gone for like 5 or 10 minutes, everything turns off and ungroups together. So that's my favorite automation.
Cool. That is actually really cool.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit more? So
yeah,
if you're watching TV, like is it a live broadcast TV that will then
just like off Apple TV or something?
Okay, so you're watching Apple TV in the living room and you walk into the kitchen that also has a TV screen in there. The TV screen will then turn on to Apple TV. How do you sync up what the content you're playing?
Lots of wires. It's all like fiber HDMI cables and HDMI over Ethernet. Right. So this is kind of a hodgepodge right now. I'm working on refining this, but luckily because my house is so small, and I do this professionally, I could run a new wire pretty much anywhere in my house pretty easily. So, for the kitchen, we have like a fiber HDMI cable that ties into a matrix in the living room. And then same for the other areas as well. And so it's all physically tied together. And so, if we wanted to, we could just turn the TV on manually and it would still have the same image that is on in the family room.
Yeah, so I guess you're plugging in the Apple into your HDMI matrix. It's got the one input, four outputs sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just have the Apple TV. It's got two inputs into it. We just have the Apple TV fed into the Matrix. So hypothetically, you can switch the inputs too. So if you had like an Xbox or Fire TV
Right.
or DVD player, whatever else you had, you could easily put that into it as well, and then
Yep.
have that display or that input go to all the TVs. And so that honestly, like between that and the sound following you everywhere, that's kind of my favorite things at the house. And it's one of those like wow factors when somebody comes over and it's like, oh, well, we're watching TV in the living room, but we actually want to move to the den and, kind of hang out and grill out and stuff. And it's like, oh, we can still watch the same exact thing in the den without any lag or anything like that. So it's one of those things like when somebody comes over to your house and you show them that, they're like, oh, like that's what you can do with technology kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. Like the fact that you literally just walk into the room. You don't have to pick up a remote, find the remote that's hidden in the couch somewhere. It just all happens. That's cool.
It's at some point I actually looked at, I don't know if you remember this, Phil. This is years ago. I was like, it'd be cool if I actually just use HDMI extenders everywhere, right? And not a matrix, just because I know those are not cheap, but like basically just get a bunch of individual ones and
Yeah.
kind of run those through a switcher of some kind, right? Yeah, but then I was like, okay, that's a lot of like running cables through walls, and because I would have loved to just centralize everything in my server rack in my basement, right? Just get a couple of shelves, throw everything in there. And I was like, oh, that's a lot of effort for that. So I mean, I know you do this professionally too, TJ. So it's like it's probably a lot easier for you when you do it every day, but it's I've always thought that concept was really cool, right? And like even nothing like have like that way if I wanted to, I don't know, play Xbox somewhere and have one media PC and like that kind of thing, I don't need to have even in terms of I don't need to have like multiple Fire Sticks or whatever Apple TVs, all of those kind of things, right? Just have one of everything and then plug it into there. I've always thought that that's a cool like video distribution method,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and it's one of those things until like I would say until the past like 5 years or so. I used to do a lot of distributed video when I was doing the more professional automation systems, and you kind of had to because there was cheap media streaming devices like the Apple TV and stuff, but it was one of those things that like you wanted to watch the same thing everywhere, and nowadays it's just like just buy an Apple TV for this room, and it's the same thing. Like unless you need to watch the exact same thing on every TV, you don't need a distributed video system. You just need an
Yeah.
Apple TV or Roku or whatever it is, and bam, you're done. It's it's $100 compared to a good HDMI extender is I would say 150 $200 easily, and then you have to have a dedicated line between each location. And then
Yeah.
if you want actual like HDMI over networking, for something like Just Add Power is a good example of this. The company Just Add Power,
Mhm.
it's thousands of dollars to do like a couple TVs, and it's like,
Yeah.
do you really need that? In some of these houses maybe, but my house is not big, so I definitely don't need that. I can just run an HDMI cable.
In the 2025.7 release notes episode, we were talking about Plex between Rohan and I. Are you a Plex user, or have you gone somewhere else?
Nah, so I used to do my own Plex server. I had, I think I had one time I had like 30 terabytes of stuff going on. But I don't have the patience for it anymore. And honestly, I'm not a big TV watcher anymore at this point. Like I'd rather spend time on forums and other things compared to like watching TV. So not a big TV watcher, which is kind of ironic with how much I've spent on my TV setup.
You have the coolest TV automation. You don't even use it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's fair. So pretty much like it's just whatever subscription services or cable or what have you, not going the DIY Plex jelly
Yeah.
fit. any of that
Yeah, and
stuff.
honestly, the only thing I've kept like consistently over the years is YouTube Premium. Everything else I kind of use and turn off and stuff like that, like Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that. But YouTube Premium is pretty much what I live on these days because I like watching the tutorial videos and stuff like that. So
If you were, so you've got your moving around the house and your TV audio switching around. Do you have any other favorite automations that you're really proud of for your smart home?
the one I'm working on this summer, and it's kind of a little janky right now, but I'm figuring it out. Is I like to garden, but I don't like the manual labor of gardening. So I'm kind of a lazy gardener. We bought a house a couple years ago, and the backyard was like absolutely bare. Like there was basically nothing besides some overgrown vegetation. And we've taken that yard and we've divided it in half, and half of that yard is gardens for vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. And I think right now we have 5 raised garden beds, and then 20 or 30 linear feet of in-ground beds that we've done. I've set up the automations for those where they automatically water themselves every day. I've tied that into our weather station as well. So we have an EcoWit weather station, and it tells me when it's raining or how much the wind is and stuff like that. And the water valves I'm using are Sonos water valves. They just hook into your regular hose spigot there. And then you have little drip irrigation lines that come off that. And so I set that up as an automation. So, every day, 3 times a day, the plants automatically get watered. But if it's raining or if it's rained more than a certain amount during the day, then they don't get watered. And we also have soil moisture sensors, which I have not fully figured out how to integrate those yet. I got to work on how moist the soil should be for that to happen correctly. But I would say my garden automation is my favorite. I need to refine it a little more though.
And that's all powered through, like, is Home Assistant the brains for that?
Correct. Yeah. So Home Assistant's doing everything. Everything in our house, Home Assistant does. I try to avoid, any standalone apps or anything like that. Minus like Sonos or something that needs it. But
Interesting. So, I mean, it sounds like this is kind of, I was going to ask, what is kind of the next generation or next iteration of stuff you want to work on, or like in terms of technologies you want to integrate? Uh, because again, clearly you're very proficient in home automation, right? So it's as again having a business in it and whatnot. Uh, but what's the one side you kind of want to explore and do a little more on?
for me, I would like to do shades at some point, but I don't think it's going to happen in this house. This is our first house, and it's kind of meant as a stepping stone. And when you start looking at automated shades, until recently they've been very expensive. Like SwitchBot has released a couple options that are $200, which isn't bad. So I can outfit my living room that has 2 windows, but what I really want is my den, which has 7 windows, and so I'm spending $1,500 to $2,000 to automate the windows. So I don't think that's going to happen yet. Honestly, I think what I'm going to start working on this year though is like a proper irrigation system. We had somebody out to give us a quote to like install an irrigation system, and they would install the backflow preventer and the separate water meter so we don't get charged for sewer waste and stuff like that. But it was like $5,000 or something obnoxious. So I'm going to work on probably doing that myself because we've added so many garden beds now that it's kind of hard to manage it with just the Sonos hose valves. And it's very ugly, because those things are pretty bulky. They only control, one zone at a time. Whereas like a proper irrigation system, I can kind of set it up and, control different valves and stuff like that. So I think that's my next step, but I'm totally out of place here and I have no idea where to even start. So I've been just researching a ton on how irrigation systems work and like how I can implement it for my setup, because most of the time when people are doing irrigation system, it's for their grass. And I personally don't really care about my grass. I care about the vegetables and the fruits and stuff like that. So it's kind of, I have to tailor it to that need instead.
I guess it's a little late from when this recording is going to come out, but I literally got irrigation put in on Thursday. And again, primarily for the grass, to your point, but I did actually make sure that they overturned the sprinklers a little bit, so my our flower beds get it and whatever. Not flower bed, but like on our deck, we have a little flower bed thing, and just that kind of stuff, right? And it was interesting because the person that came in, he's local, lives a couple minutes from me, kind of thing, and he's like, hey, like, I get it, I know what the soil is here, all the stuff, and it's like he did a fantastic job, and they put in a a rainbird system for me, right? And I'm like, first thing I did, obviously, is like, okay, bring it in. Literally, he was packing up his stuff, and I already just brought it to Home Assistant. And Phil was texting me at that point, and he was like, "Oh, this is like, how is it?" And I was like, "Did you bring it into Home Assistant?" I'm like, "I'm literally doing that right now." and it was cool. So it's but what I found interesting was it's a lot. I don't know what I was expecting it to be, but it's a lot simpler than I thought it would be. Right, the integration in, and it's like, okay, I've got like a switch for zone 1, there's a switch for zone 2, a switch for, I'm like, I guess that makes sense. Like I don't know what else I was expecting from it, but that's pretty much all there is. And in the controller, there's like, I have one of those like rain sensor things that they installed as well. And again, it's like rain sensor on off, and I was like, so I assume rain sensor on means it's raining, or it's wet, right? And but it's it is. It's very primitive, but I was like, okay, I guess this makes sense, right? It's just, I don't know what else I was really expecting it to have. I would have loved for it to bring in the programs that I have programmed in it and stuff like that, so that I can actually just do the whole thing through Home Assistant and not ever use the app. But yeah, I could. I just have to delete all my programs on that side and then switch this on, switch that on, so on and so forth. But
so for me, when we started the Smart Garden last year, I had the Flume water meter, which basically just like straps to the water meter itself. It just tells you, when water is running, and it did a pretty accurate job of like telling you how much water you used. And it actually helped me find a leak last year. Like one of my irrigation hose broke, and so it's just like spewing out water forever.
Do you have that on your water main or on your tap outside on your spigot?
Yeah, my tap outside.
Okay.
Or what, the Flume?
Yeah.
The Flume actually attached to the water meter itself. It like wraps around it, and it just like, I guess it reads like the electromagnetic pulses. But they replaced my water meter, and so I don't have any automation for that right now. But so for me, I had to like basically build in some fail safes with the irrigation system. And so like I have an automation for every hose valve that, if whenever the hose valve turns on, no matter what, after 15 minutes, it turns off. Is there any like fail safes with like your irrigation, system, for example? Like, does it, or are you just basically relying on that automation to say, hey, turn on at 11 and turn off at 11:15, or is there any like fail safes involved with that?
Not right now. I do want to put some type of, again, ability to turn off the water there. I don't quite know. I haven't gotten that far into it. Again, like I said, I got it on Thursday, and I haven't thought that far into it yet. In terms of how I want to deal with, again, leaks and stuff like that, right? The nice thing is, realistically, the only place I'll get a leak is between the hose and the solenoid, which again, I'll need to figure out how I detect those leaks. I don't know that I know how yet. But inside, just because again it's cold, it gets cold here in Toronto, right? So inside, I have a water shut off. So I'd love to have some sort of just again like the automatic water shut off type things,
like a Zeus Titan or something.
Yeah, exactly, right. So get something like that in there just to shut off the water in case there is something. But right now it's I have to get a step stool and turn the thing and do that right now. But or turn it off at the spigot, but which is probably going to be my current method.
If you did shut it off like after the solenoid, you would just kill power to the whole thing, right? Because it's just running, like, to keep that solenoid open, it requires power, right? As soon as you kill power, it loses power, the valve will shut.
Yeah, that's a good idea too.
Yeah, It's just between the spigot and the solenoid that I
Yeah.
need to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always thinking about stuff like that, right? Because, automation is great and technology is great, but at some point it's going to fail.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. It's not going to work 100% all the time.
Yeah.
And so, building in those fail safes, I think is really important, especially when you're dealing with water.
Absolutely.
Like our water is relatively affordable, but if we go through 5,000 gallons of water in a day because we have a leak, like that's not affordable or sustainable.
No.
So,
Not potentially,
No.
like if you're flooding a garden or something, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and what I did is I actually got him to install the Rainbird, the actual unit itself, inside in my basement. So he just poked a hole through my concrete foundation, whatever, and brought it inside. Because then at that point, to your point, when I do need to physically power it up, it's just a matter of turning a thing or literally just unplugging it.
Yeah.
Rather than having to do all this extra stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of like all my stuff gets smart outlets for the most part, like, so if we have like Nanoleaf permanent outdoor lights that are on the house, and like even those have a smart outlet because occasionally it needs rebooted. It's fine.
What's your smart light situation outside? I'm actually curious. So do you like it? What are you doing with it?
Yeah, so I have the Nanoleaf sent me their permanent outdoor lights. I really enjoy it. For some reason, I can't get it consistently to like stay on my network no matter what I try. So that's kind of a pain point for me at the moment. It might just be my fault, honestly. I had the LifeX path lights until recently. Do not recommend those. They're actually sitting in a box right now because I just removed them. And all my other lights are just regular, like low voltage 12 volt lights that are controlled by a smart outlet. So we have a privacy fence around our backyard. And I actually bought, I don't know if you've seen them, but they're called deck lights traditionally.
Yeah.
It's basically a little puck light that you put on like stairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have those on every other post of the fence so we can see like the perimeter of the fence at nighttime. We have pathway lights that are going up to the house, and then we have a couple at the end of the driveway as well. Those are just regular, 3000K, nothing, no smarts at all, minus the smart outlet to control them.
Nice. And are they wired in, or are they solar, or? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, they're all wired. So I do landscape lighting for my company as well. So, burying all the wire and getting the fixtures and stuff is the easy part for me. So all those are hardwired. I have a transformer for the backyard and a transformer for the front yard. So, hypothetically I could turn one or two off. So most of the time they're just, on automatically at sunset, and they turn off at sunrise. But if we're having like a fire in the backyard or something like that, we can just turn all the backyard lights off and not have to worry about it. We did ring solar lights initially when we first moved in the house because I didn't know what we actually wanted to do. And they make a nice wall-mounted solar light. I think it's only like $30 or $40, and you can bring it into Home Assistant with the Ring 2 MQTT integration. So I was able to directly integrate those as well. So that was nice.
And that doesn't need cloud though, does it? If you're using MQTT,
I think this one did only because they actually had to use the Ring hub. So the Ring lights did not have the Zigbee built into them or whatever, but the hub itself did. So I think it was a cloud integration.
Yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, hardwire lights are the way to go. It's the wire itself is relatively cheap. Like we did our whole house, even like if I was to buy it from the big box store down the road or something, like a couple $100 in wire. And we have a ton of lights going on. So everybody else in our neighborhood has basically no lights, and we're just over here looking like Fort Knox all lit up with all our lights and everything. So
yeah,
it actually helped out a couple weeks ago. We had some thefts going on, people checking car doors and stuff, and they totally skipped us just because I feel like we just had so many lights. They're just like, that and all the cameras.
It's funny you say that, because it's like I feel like right now my community is kind of like that, right? It's kind of like, people got a couple of things going on here and there's you'll see a gemstone light here and there, whatever, right? And then there'll be one person, not me, right? Because I want to eventually get there, but that's not me yet. And you'll see the one person that's just like, it's like dark, 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 and it's just like, that the heavens have opened and all the light is falling on this one house kind of deal. And I think it's hilarious, right? It's like, but sometimes it's done tastefully. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is very aggressive and not nice.
Yeah,
Right?
I always try to start off with like less, at first, just to see like what it actually looks like and stuff. And like our house is nothing fancy, so we're not trying to like light up the house or anything, but give a pathway on the sidewalk and create some visibility for like the cameras and stuff like that. So
I did the garden lights for our place last summer, so 6 months ago, and well, I put a LED spotlight into. We have a big tree in our backyard, right? It looks really cool, like really tall tree. Anyway, now it's winter down under, and all the leaves have fallen off. And now when I drive up to our house, the spotlight is lighting up the whole tree because it's got no leaves to cover it. So I can literally see my
Right.
house driving up towards it from the backyard. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
cool. I guess the whole tree's lit up now because there's no leaves to
Yeah.
cover that light.
It kind of makes it more inviting too, right? And you pull up to a house and it's just like completely dark and it's just like, I don't know, it feels like nobody lives there kind of thing. But if you pull up to a house and they've got a couple path lights and maybe like an uplight or two, it makes you feel like you're supposed to be there kind of thing.
Yeah. And it's funny. This is actually a point of contention in my wife and I's design thoughts, right? And it's like, what do we want to do? Because our front yard is like, it's not bad right now. My grass is burnt, but it's not bad, right? Like, and we're like, okay, we should do something nice with lights and stuff like that. So I got these like solar lights that are just like staked in from Costco, right? And they're nice. They're like the little pillar style lights. And my wife's like, I hate them. And she's like, we need up lights, we need this, we need that. So it's just like, and like I'm like, yeah, I'm just gauging. Like I want to redo a couple of things. I want to add a tree and things like that. But it's like it's just funny, right? How you can't decide whatever, and just like, all right, let's figure out what I want to do up front here and do that. But then and even same thing, even on the deck and stuff, right? And outside on my fences and stuff, I want to do something, but I don't need it to be, to your point, Fort Knox, like hey, look at me, like I'm here. But yeah.
Yeah, for our house, I usually just implement things. So my wife is very forgiving, fortunately, and she enjoys the technology stuff. We actually work together at my company as well. And so usually I just I just do things, and then it's like, oh, I like that, or I don't like this. Can we tweak this or whatever? But I think it's because of that that design philosophy of just making everything work as like a normal device. If I didn't have that in my ethos, I think that would be a lot more difficult. But it's everything just works like normal. So if you don't like the smart stuff, we can just disable it. But it's there in case we want it in the future.
Yeah, and I really like that philosophy, right? And it's like you don't have to use it. You don't have to do anything. Just wait. You want to flick a switch? Flick a switch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, TJ, thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us. Where can people find you if they want to hear more about what you're doing with Gavin and everyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a personal website. It's just Huddleston, HUDDLESTON.bio. It has some, links on there to my companies and stuff like that. You can also listen to us mostly weekly at hometech.fm. We run a similar podcast, not as focused on Home Assistant, but we always talk about Home Assistant just because there's always advancements and things going on. So hometech.fm is probably the best place to find me. And if you didn't regret hearing my voice today, that's always a good option for you.
There it is. Cool. Thank you so much, mate.
Thanks, sure.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Cheers.